Ainsley was on a little earlier.
Yeah, a little earlier. We're both blonde.
All right, a new battle emerging in the fight to avoid the so-called fiscal cliff, with House Speaker John Boehner going after Obamacare now, saying the president's signature health care law must be on the table for cuts as Congress works to negotiate a deal. Chris Wilson is a GOP pollster and the former executive director of the Texas Republican Party. Zerlina Maxwell is a Democratic strategist and contributing writer to Ebony.com. So nice to see both of you. Thanks for coming in on the holiday. And Chris, I thought that Obamacare, according to John Boehner, was the law of the land. Now he wants to put it on the chopping block?
Well, it's the only honest approach. I mean, there's lots of laws of the land that have got to be considered here, and we've got to move beyond the typical Washington shell game where you take a few bills and say these are off the table, and then look at everything else, which doesn't leave much else. If we're going to take an honest approach and try and cut the budget deficit, then what we've got to do is look at everything that's been passed and look at everything equally and make decisions against each one of those equally, weighed against each other. And if Obamacare is the most important policy being considered, it survives. If there are other things that are more important, then it doesn't survive, and that's, again, the only honest approach to taking and approaching the fiscal cliff that time is running out on very quickly.
Zerlina, if there's going to be a deal, spending cuts have got to be put on the table, and Obamacare costs a lot of money.
Well, that's not true, actually. Obamacare actually cuts the deficit not only in a 10-year period, but even more so in the over 20 years. And the bottom line here is this. John Boehner said in his own op-ed this week that he tried 2 different ways to get rid of Obamacare, going to the Supreme Court and then also in the election. But he forgot one. They tried 33 times to repeal Obamacare in the Congress and failed all 33 times. And so the bottom line is now we have Obamacare. It is the law of the land. He said so himself. We need to take it off the table and focus on the Bush tax cuts, which American voters have decided they want to keep for people under $250,000, and they want to get rid of for the people making more than $250,000.
Chris, Zerlina says that Obamacare lowers the deficit over time, and a lot of people have seen that analysis and actually agree with it. But Republicans have been going after Obamacare in every way, shape, or form since it was passed in 2010. Is this an indication, with the op-ed that John Boehner wrote, that Republicans are going to keep on going after it?
Well, first of all, regarding the deficit, the CBO itself said if nothing is done on the fiscal cliff, then we'll look at $800 billion in perpetuity per year added to the deficit. And Obamacare amounts for $100 billion of that. So let's just be accounted. That's $100 billion a year in spending that doesn't currently exist. And if we're going to do everything we can to keep the economy growing, not disrupt the economy, the easiest thing we can cut is spending that is not yet taking place. That $100 billion a year is the easiest way to do that. But again, I think the bottom line is you've got to start from an absolute beginning where you look at everything equally. If Obamacare is the most important program to the president and the Democrats, then it survives. If there are other things that are more important than it, then it does not survive. And if we take one thing off the table from the outset, then this is not a true negotiation. And this needs to work the same way every other negotiation works. You look at everything that exists and make decisions about each of them based on their own merits, not taking one single bill and taking it off the table, particularly a bill that 47% of Americans still oppose, a plurality over those that support it.
And an article in the Washington Post this week showed the number of people who still don't even know exactly what Obamacare is all about and whether they would benefit from it or be eligible for it. Zerlina, I've been asking Democrats since Election Day, tell me, please, as we get these negotiations over the cliff underway, where would Democrats be willing to cut? What programs would? Chris mentioned, look, if Obamacare is the most important thing to Democrats, okay, then it remains. But what would Democrats be willing to sacrifice? Because it's very clear that everybody's going to have to give up something.
Well, I'm certainly sure that we can all agree that American voters went to the polls on November the 6th and decided that they didn't want to go the way of Mitt Romney's ideas and cutting taxes on the rich.
So give me a couple of cuts real fast, just a couple of spending programs.
Raising taxes.
Spending programs that, Zerlina, the Democrats would be able to cut. Just a couple of specifics for me.
Well, the military has already asked for specific cuts in defense spending, and so there would be a very good place to start. But also, like I'm saying, we're not gonna cut benefits to people that need them. We're going to raise taxes on people that can afford it.
Zerlina,
everyone's discussing that. That's what we voted on, and Democrats came out on top on that.
That's not a part of the negotiation.
It is a part of the negotiation.
We're out of time, but very, very interesting discussion. I'd love to have you both back on as we head closer towards this deadline. They've got to come up with a deal by New Year's Eve. Thank you both. Enjoy the rest of the holiday.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.